Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Eric.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. We had a wonderful Thanksgiving this week. Hopefully, all of you out there had equally as wonderful a holiday as we did.
And you want to know what? Next year, come on over to Dan's place.
Do not make promises you cannot keep, Jeff.
It's not my house. Everybody is invited to Dan's place. His address.
You know what?
Is...
We had a great Thanksgiving at Dan's place this year. It was a little unexpected. We usually go to our cousin's place, and before that, we would have everyone over to our parents' place years back. But this year, we had to do a little audible. Mm-hmm. Our mom was involved in a car accident.
Well, I mean, involved is an interesting word. I would say... well, she was hit by a car.
Yeah, that is the involvement that she had in that. She was crossing the street here in New York City. A car came around, did not stop. She spent 10 days in the hospital, and she is back at home recovering really nicely and remarkably.
Yeah, she's on like week 5 of 6 or whatever. Like she is able to walk with crutches. She's able to sometimes walk with no crutches. Like she's
going to physical therapy.
Yeah.
She's been so warmed by all of the amazing messages that we've gotten from friends and family and strangers alike. So anybody who has reached out to us, believe me, we have passed along your good words and your good energy to her, and there's no doubt that it played a great part in her attitude and her recovery to this point today and onward. So thank you for that.
Yeah, even Bun B.
Why do you say it like that? It's like Bun usually wouldn't do that.
No, Bun B definitely would reach out, but we passed it along. Bun, don't worry.
Yeah,
I know that Bun's probably listening because this is the Russ Bengtson podcast.
So we are very, very grateful and thankful for the fact that we were all together this year. Mm-hmm. Certainly that things were not any worse than they were, and we were just happy to all be together. And as these things go, you know, me and you and Dan together, we have this chemistry, this ease around any situation, whether you're talking about cooking or cleaning or putting on an event.
Yeah, Dan and I clean a mean bathroom.
There's something very natural to the way that we all operate beyond us being brothers, you know, and the same goes with when we're around, you know, Shinsuke or Greg or Dennis or Craig or Kara or Tiffany or whoever, because it's something that we learned when we were kids at Purchase Day Camp, and later on when we worked after school at the Purchase Community House, or over the summers at Purchase Day Camp, being a counselor, working in the audio video department, whatever it was, doing maintenance before camp started or after camp ended. And it's something where, you know, you find out that not everyone had an upbringing like this. You know, not everyone learned leadership like we did. Not everyone got a chance to explore their creativity or become better teammates with people like we did. And we give such credit to this after-school program that we were a part of, this summer camp that we were a part of. And the reason I bring this up is because today we put new merch on ItsTheReal.com/shop. We have a new hooded sweatshirt called the Monthly Winner sweatshirt that we put a lot of love into because the Purchase Community House plays a very special part in our lives, and we wanted to pay tribute to that through this sweatshirt. And you can get it today at ItsTheReal.com/shop, and it's dope looking, it's dope feeling, and again, this is as close to us as you can get. This isn't something where we just like throw our name on something, you know, with all due respect to like the Lakers jersey. There's like, you know, a little of us in that.
Right. I mean, we didn't grow up as Lakers fans.
No, this is legitimately as close as you can get. We wanted to pay tribute to our youth. Mm-hmm. And also pay tribute to our catchphrases now. So you have Not For Real on the back. A lot of people have been asking for us to do merch with Not For Real on it. On the front, you have caricatures of us that pays tribute to the community house, done by our friend Brian Reddy, who we grew up with at the community house.
Yeah.
And it does say Monthly Winner on the right-hand side.
Yeah, which because there were games like basketball freeze-out, hockey shootout.
Yeah, where after school, you would be able to win one of these shirts should you win this competition.
So it's on sale now. ItsTheReal.com/shop.
Go get yours today. It's holiday season.
Yeah.
So now is the time to get one for you and your loved ones. So get one now and look dope and feel dope. Jeff, on the podcast today.
On the podcast today is Russ. How did I mispronounce his first name?
I don't know.
On the podcast today is Russ Bengtson.
Russ, as you know, is a big deal in shoes and basketball and writing and hip hop. And if you've seen him, he is unmistakable. He has this giant beard. But a lot of you may not know his full story, coming from Long Island, going to school down in Delaware, going on to be editor-in-chief at Slam Magazine, going on to create shoe programming at Complex with people like Clark Kent, and having just a huge, pardon the phrase, but footprint in this business. Russ Bengtson is just one of the funniest people we know.
Yes.
And one of the most revered because, you know, he didn't end up working for Sports Illustrated. Spoiler alert. You know? He didn't end up working for ESPN, the magazine.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. But please listen to the rest of this podcast.
Yeah.
But he is somebody who is so important to, pardon the phrase, the culture.
Oof.
No, he really is.
I know, but oof.
We can't use that anymore?
No.
It's not the end of the year yet.
But we never even used it.
We haven't
Why
made
did you start using it when everybody has stopped?
Well, no, that, you know, when a joke has gone too far and it's like you can keep it going so it circles back.
Yeah.
That's this. So let's the culture.
Ugh.
So Russ is a huge part of the environment.
Oh.
And we're just thrilled for him to come here and share his experiences with Kevin Garnett or Allen Iverson.
Yeah,
totally.
Jonathan Mannion.
And there's just so many great stories here. He's a great storyteller, and this has been a long one in the making. There were times when we thought that Russ didn't even know who we were. Turns out
he sort of did.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Russ is a great dude. I'm super thrilled to have him tell his story here today. I think you guys are going to love this episode.
And I do too.
See, Jeff has given his stamp of approval. Jeff, as you like to do, I know you have 3 episodes that you want to recommend right at your fingertips right now. You have prepared and you know which episodes you want to recommend to the people, and you're going to tell the people right now, starting with,
and by the way, it's good that I didn't just look these up as you were stretching.
You definitely did not.
Stretching that.
So who's it going to be, Jeff? We have 219 other episodes to choose from, and
off
you
the
have
top of my head.
You have put in painful research.
I'm going to say episode number 12, DJ Clark Kent. Whoops.
Did you just start playing it?
Didn't mean to do that.
DJ Clark Kent, man. Clark is just one of the greatest dudes ever. That's not even to get into his production, the fact that he DJ'd for Biggie, the fact that he found Jay-Z. We're not even going to get into any of that. He's just one of the greatest dudes ever, and for that alone, you should listen to his episode. It's like 2 hours of pure greatness. DJ Clark Kent.
Also, our top listened to podcast ever.
Wow. So add to those numbers, guys.
Yeah.
Episode number 12.
Number 21 with Bun B.
Shout out to Bun B, man. Houston's own, Port Arthur's own, one of our great friends. He's a superior human being. And in this podcast, you know, we had to talk about Houston stuff. So JJ Watt, and we talked about when he met Manny Fresh, and we talked about Sam Cassell almost running him over in his Range Rover. We talked about Mike Dean. We talked about him in the Solange video. We talked about UGK forever. There's a lot in there. It's always the most fun when we're around Bun B. So please take your time and listen to that Bun B episode number 21.
Number 95, Jersey Jinx.
Shout out to Jersey Jinx, man. Did we have the best time going to Miami with Brandon Jersey Jinx Jenkins?
That sort of sounds like your Joe Budden impression.
What?
Boy, did we have a good time.
Shout out to Jinx. We went down to Miami for Red Bull, and our flight got postponed 7 times and then got canceled. So we spent a lot of time with Jinx, and he's a great friend of ours to begin with. But the fact that
it was like going to war with Jinx.
It was like doing a live podcast with him from JFK. But you should listen to this episode with Jinx because, man, talk about when he was making mixtapes in high school, talk about when he went to college and then brought Steve Stout down to speak to his class and ended up doing work for translation and going on to Mass Appeal and being hired away for Complex and doing work with Pigeons and Planes. And
now he works at State of the Environment.
State of the Environment? So
it's a good call.
That was good.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jersey Jinx. Check out that episode. And yes, go support all our friends over at
Revolt.
Jeff, if people are looking for holiday presents, they can go get t-shirts and rhyme books and now sweatshirts at itsthereal.com/shop. Do you recommend they do that?
Yes.
Good.
That's a strong endorsement.
Great.
By me.
Go do that. Go
Yeah.
do that right now. And get ready for a great episode with Russ Bengtson. Jeff, when do you want to get into it?
Right now.
Yo, what up, it's Eric, a.k.a. Humpty Hump Swag, a.k.a. Post-Nasal Drip.
Yo, what up, it's Jeff, aka In a Different Bracket, aka NIT Tourney.
Hi, I'm Russ. I didn't come up with the whole name. I'm terrible with this.
Yeah, this is your third favorite podcast to waste time with ItsTheReal. Bow, 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 blah, 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 blah. Russ, what's happening?
Not a whole lot. Happy to be here on the Upper West Side.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
happy to have you here. You know, we were together in Queens.
Yes.
We went
Yes.
to City Field for a New Balance activation, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what you expected, but I didn't expect it to snow that day.
No, I did not expect it to snow because it was like late March. Was
Yep.
it late March. It wasn't quite April.
And we're
yet.
going out there to have ostensibly home run derby. I mean, I don't know if they were going to bring the fences in or whatever.
Yeah, we never really figured out what that was going to be like.
And then they housed us downstairs in the batting cages, and you won.
Well, I would have won. I'm still kind of bitter about
Oh no,
that.
right? No,
yeah.
you came in second.
I lost to
Yeah.
a professional athlete.
This
he
is
was
true.
like a pro lacrosse player, and like I understand lacrosse isn't baseball, but professional athlete is a professional athlete. Like the guy's probably going to be better than we are.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Because the rest of us are like quote unquote influencers,
yes,
right?
we are weekend warriors.
That's
if you
exactly
will,
right. Yeah.
and not even through playing sports on the weekends. But I mean, hey, it was fun. I'm totally down
great.
to do that again. If the Mets are listening, they can invite us all back out this year to
Yeah,
try again.
winter or whatever.
Right.
Well,
Hopefully
can I
skip
just
the
say,
snow.
we were in the same bracket.
Yeah.
And I came in second to you, and I was so happy that we didn't tie because I had nothing left in the tank.
I didn't either. I was definitely hurting by the end of that.
Yeah.
You don't realize, I guess, hitting hurts.
But also, it wasn't home run derby in the batting cages because it was just make contact.
Right. Just put it past something.
Or
Exactly.
whatever.
That's the
Yeah.
point.
Just
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
hit
Tip
it
it, it's
down.
fine.
Yeah.
Right.
But we all left with engraved bats.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I know that they misspelled your name on the jersey, but did they misspell it on the bat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was one of those things where there's so much swag
Yeah.
and they want to go through so much to personalize it. And yeah, they managed to spell my name wrong on everything, including the shoes. They did resend stuff later.
Oh, really?
They actually, stitched my name on a jersey, so it was
Oh.
a nicer one.
Well, that's kind.
But the bat, it's funny, the bat was just screened on this time.
Oh,
So
is
I
it?
have the engraved misspelled one, and now I have a screened on properly spelled one. And I'm not sure what to do with all this stuff.
Let me just tell you, you must be killing it because when we asked for our things to get replaced because they put Curl God on my shoes and they put Guapo Slim on Eric's shoes,
Which is
Oh.
backwards, yeah.
they were like, yeah, we'll look into it. Never looked into
never,
it.
never.
Yeah.
Well, what's the worst misspelling that someone has committed for you?
You know what? It's usually the same. It's
Okay.
usually just the ST.
Yeah, you're right.
The more often it happens, the funnier it is because I'm like, it's not like you can't find my name spelled correctly somewhere. It is literally my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle. You
Right.
only have to look that far. You don't have to do a lot of research. But-
Right.
Well, what
You
is
know,
the
oh well.
correct pronunciation of your name?
Well, it's just Bengtson. I mean, and if you say it fast, I guess you don't get that particular enunciation. I don't know. But that's the thing. I always think of it as it's a Swedish last name. It ends in son. How hard is that? There's a
Well-
lot of names that end in son.
Yeah, Anderson, but yours
Right,
is
right.
with 5 different consonants right in a
In
row.
a row, right. No, I guess, and that's the thing. You always think of your own name as being easy to spell,
Of
but
course, yeah.
I guess for other people, it
Yeah, why
does
can't you be
come
more
off a little
understanding
weird.
of other people?
I should just change it.
Yeah.
actually.
Honestly,
At this point.
Yeah.
You're originally from
Long Island.
Long Island, North
Suffolk
Shore,
County.
South Shore,
So,
somewhere in the middle.
Kind of somewhere in the middle, I guess.
All right.
Technically, closer to North Shore.
And what
Closer
was
to
growing
North
up in
Shore.
Long Island like?
I mean, look, it was.
Was it
just-
too exciting?
It was very suburban.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not too exciting. Man, I don't know. A lot of going and playing soccer on the weekends.
Yep.
Very, very traditional Long Island upbringing.
What's the
Listening to
closest mall to you?
Smith Haven.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Smith
good,
Haven.
yeah.
So, who was R.A. the Rugged Man? When he did that Smith Haven Mall song, it's oh, yes. All right. Someone finally speaking for me.
I feel seen.
Yeah.
What'd your folks do?
My dad worked for IBM.
Okay.
And my mom was a teacher and then kind of gave that up when me and my sister were born and went back to doing kind of part-time things in our school district.
Oh, wow.
But luckily she worked for the elementary school by the time we were in junior high and high school. So, fortunately we didn't have the mom being a, student aide in the same school.
Yeah. Is your sister older?
Sister is younger.
Okay.
She went into teaching too, but she got married. Her husband is a professor, a music professor, who was trying to get tenure for a while. I think he finally did. So they were bouncing all over the place. And now they're in Charleston, Illinois.
Where is that?
Which is, I think, a town
Illinois.
I haven't I don't think I've even been there. He was at Northwestern for a while, so he was like just outside of Chicago, and they've been all over.
Right
they've
on.
been Colorado, Arizona.
So as the older child, did you get away with everything? Was it easier for you or harder for you?
It's a good question.
It's only good questions on this podcast.
You got to get the one good one out of the way early.
Yeah. It's the mall, and then we get into the psychology of it.
I feel like technically maybe it was harder, but only because she was actually, a proper student, and I definitely wasn't. I was the one looking to get away with not doing as much as possible. And she would be the come home and do the homework right away. So it's like, okay, you're setting a bad example for us here. She would probably say it was harder for her because she had to deal with teachers who, were going off their impressions of me rather than her. And like, she's a good student. And I was like the classic smart, but want to get away with things. So
yeah, same. Yeah. And my dad worked for IBM. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Do we have the same story?
Wait, so when you were in high school, what were you interested in?
I got into journalism in high school.
So school paper?
Yeah. But not till I was a senior.
Okay.
And the teacher, Mrs. Bengtson, who did that was great.
Okay.
Benson, not
closed.
Bengtson.
I know it's
yeah,
closed.
Exactly. And this
Bengtson.
was just getting into. This would have been '89. It was late '80s, so it was just starting to do newspaper like on a Mac.
Mm-hmm.
So the person who was the editor the year before had graduated, as people are wont to do in high school. So I kind of got sucked into doing a lot of the layout and other stuff that year. So there was actually a shift like in my college application. So I was a Boy Scout. I was actually an Eagle Scout.
Nice.
Ladies. Yeah. Any ladies listening?
So when I started applying to colleges, I wanted to do some sort of outdoor thing like environmental science or whatever it was. Half my college applications were for that, and then I got into this school paper thing and was like, oh, the writing thing should happen. So like literally midway through my college applications, I swerved and started applying for journalism instead.
So where does the journalism interest come from though? Were you watching All the President's Men? Was it or the paper?
No. I mean, I don't think I was that serious about it, or involved in that serious aside. I mean, I definitely wanted to do entertainment skewed stuff or sports or whatever. Even when I was in high school, I started writing about, or I covered the high school basketball team for a local paper.
Whoa.
I do like how Eric's initial impulse is just who are you trying to bring down?
I mean, I probably should have looked into that a little more carefully. That's a good thing.
What scandals were happening in Long Island basketball?
Right. There must have been some horrible scandal, even at the school, that I could have brought out. I don't know. I mean, I was always into writing and English and whatever else. I had my third grade teacher was also my fourth grade teacher. It was one of those things where I didn't get left back, but she jumped ahead.
Right.
Sure.
And I think it was in third grade, we had some spelling bee against the fifth graders or something, and it's I think it was in third grade. I could be wrong about this. Don't look me up and, find out it's wrong.
Again,
but,
that's what this podcast is all about.
Poking
holes in your personal history.
So she did this spelling baseball where you would pick single, double, triple, home run and whatever, and harder word or whatever. And while I've forgotten a lot about elementary school, I do distinctly remember picking a home run word, getting sphere, and spelling it correctly as a third grader. So
imagine we did that at Citi Field, by the way. That's the home run derby that we did.
There you go. I would have stood a chance at that, even against the damn pro lacrosse player.
I bet he can't spell.
I have a photo of him thumbtacked above my bed. I'm going to bring him down.
Spell depth.
Spell my last name. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, that somehow switched into writing and journalism, and by the time I started actually looking at colleges and figuring out which one I was going to go to, I was pretty sure that's what I wanted to do.
And was there some idea where you could sort of split it where it would be like maybe an outdoor situation, but also get your writing in?
Maybe there was
Somewhere where they had like a good journalism program in Colorado or Vermont, or
Right,
somewhere where
right.
you could explore.
Of course, I instead went to Delaware, which I
Right.
don't think has much of an outdoor vibe.
They have golden hens.
Or
blue hens?
Blue hens,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah, they have hens.
Get outside, Jeff. Yeah.
I also think I realized at some point that the whole, science side of the environmental thing probably wasn't going to work out because I'm not a math person or a science person per se. I took some of that stuff, but actually going into college, you had to test into a math course. I'd only take one math course as an English major, like whatever. Somehow I tested into calculus, despite having not taken pre-calculus and not having taken math at all my senior year of high school. And I had no idea what I was doing. I don't know why I would have tested into that.
You're just a savant.
I don't think I cheated on my entrance test because that would be really dumb. But I took calculus, took it my freshman year, first semester. And that was one of those moments where you walk into a classroom and it's one of those giant, what do you call it, auditorium size classrooms. And, that first day I came to two realizations. Number one, I had no idea how I was going to get through this. And number two, that there was no way they could take attendance every day. So yeah, I barely made it through that.
Did you start writing for the school paper right when you got to school?
I definitely, yeah. I mean, I started doing stuff like that. I guess maybe I didn't actually write for the paper right away. I mean, I was definitely figuring out how to get into that and how to do that. Their paper at Delaware was twice a week, all student run, very separate from the actual journalism quote unquote program.
Right.
Although I feel in the long run, the paper was the journalism program. I definitely learned way more doing stuff there than in any of the classes I took.
For sure.
Apologies to the professors.
Now, I went to Syracuse and I wrote for the school paper, and it was 100% separate from school. It was totally independent, and it felt like I wasn't a journalism major, but I wrote for sports and I wrote for entertainment, but it just felt like its own ecosystem and totally just we were getting away with something. But it felt legit though, because it wasn't part of school.
No, it was legit. You were totally on your own, and it's if the paper was going to come out on the day it came out, you had to do it. And there were a lot of long nights and a lot of 7-Eleven trips at random times, and again, I was there at kind of a weird time where it's everything starts getting produced on computer, but you're still literally waxing pages to paste them up, to ship them off to the printer. So it's now I'm sure it's a lot easier where you're just laying it out on the computer. I think by the end of the time I was there, we were just laying it on the computer. But
Well, now there aren't any newspapers.
that is all very true. Now, damn it. Man.
For our audience
Bring it all
listening, a
down.
newspaper.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everything was changing really fast, and you're still kind of on the proper technical, I don't know, cutting edge of what's happening, where something happening at a real paper is kind of the same as what you're doing there. So
Did you think that was what your future sort of held for you?
I thought it was going to be something like that. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to write about once I got out. I do remember wanting to do entertainment stuff and being wanting to write about big time stuff or whatever, and wanting to do record reviews or concert reviews or movie reviews and all that stuff. And I did all that stuff back then.
Yeah, you were able to sort of go to screenings or
Yeah.
review.
We went to a lot of screenings. I remember going to the screening of Zebrahead, Michael Rappaport's first movie with Nas's first song in it.
Yeah.
And we definitely, there was a panel sort of thing with the director, who I forget who that was, but I'm pretty sure Rappaport was there and Nebuchadnezzar Wright and whoever else was in it. That was one of the good ones. I actually liked that movie, but we definitely reviewed a lot of bad movies. I remember going to see a screening of Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Sylvester Stallone and
that classic.
which Estelle Getty, I think, one of the Golden Girls. And it was one of those things where you're just I don't even know how this got greenlit at all, let alone made, let alone released. But that was the stuff I wanted to write. I wanted to write about bad stuff. I didn't want to review good things. I wanted to shit on everything, what I could. And there's definitely regrets. That's kind of the good thing. And now I feel people are going to go dig this stuff up now. Like, I don't think any of it's online because we predated the internet by just enough. So someone would have to go back and digitize all of it. And I'm not sure if anyone's done that yet. But someday, like, you know, the things that people are going to find to be like, oh, well, explain why you wrote this.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be my review of Check Your Head. And like, I was like really harsh on it. And
Really?
as a Beastie Boys fan, like somehow I missed Paul's Boutique, or I skipped Paul's Boutique. And I think like, because it got delayed so long and like they switched record labels or whatever else. And like, you obviously that album has gotten treated much kinder through time.
Sure.
I feel like even back then people didn't know what the hell they were doing. So for me, coming at Check Your Head basically straight from Licensed to Ill, like I was just like, what is this? I don't know. The vocals are all down and like, and I remember like I wrote about it and was like such a smart ass, like basically like I was the Beastie Boys from Licensed to Ill.
Yeah.
And someone from like one of the local bands in the area wrote a letter to and was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're an idiot. And I think we ran the guy's letter. And I'm pretty sure, like, even then I was like, oh, man, I've made a huge mistake.
Damn.
But yeah, that's going to be the one that, like, completely takes me down one day.
Right. The reason that you can't run for president.
Right. Or at least can't write about hip hop anymore.
Yeah.
Well, where do you think your point of view comes from?
That's a good question. I mean,
Another good
I
question.
know.
I know.
Two
I
for
know.
two.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come up with another one soon.
How do you pronounce your name?
I mean, some of it's definitely growing up in the suburbs, and some of it, a lot is definitely dictated by that. I don't know. Some of it's probably like trying to make up for it, even, or like, obviously since moving to the city, like I've been in the city now for 20 something years, and it's like whenever you meet people who are literally born here, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not really a real New Yorker yet. It's like, even though I've been in the city as long as some quote unquote real New Yorkers have been alive.
Yeah.
It's discovering like Public Enemy in the late 80s, like in the suburbs where I had like, my high school, I think was like probably 99.8% white, it's like, and realizing like there is these other things out there, hearing like Nation of Millions for the first time was just like, holy shit. Like, and I still feel like that when I listen to that record, like I kind of came to hip hop through like, through the Beastie Boys and through like Run DMC, I probably still have in my parents' attic, like that original dubbed copy of Raising Hell I got from somebody. And then hearing that and kind of going, wait, they have other albums and like going back through that stuff. But I also go back to, Michael Jordan, and it's so cliched, but like, I can't remember exactly if like I discovered Air Jordans through Michael Jordan or the other way around. It was both like kind of at the same time for me. And I grew up like a baseball fan. That was my parents' fault. Thank you for making me a Mets fan, Mom and Dad.
But you grew up at a good time to be a Mets fan, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the earliest days, not really. Like there's definitely photos of me in photo albums, like going through baseball cards in like 1979, maybe. Like I probably knew who all the Mets were like that early, 78, 79, when they were still terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a good time because soon afterwards, Strawberry and Gooden in like 86.
Keith
and,
Hernandez
like,
in
amazing.
like 82 or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got to see them turn into a juggernaut when the Yankees were kind of garbage.
Yeah.
It's like I caught the tail end of like really good Yankee stuff in like 78 with Reggie and, all that. And I still loved Reggie Jackson, still do. Yeah, I mean, my parents are baseball fans. So basketball was one of those things that I kind of picked up on my own. Like they had no idea what was going on with that. So I felt like that was kind of my own thing. And like, it's funny, my friend Chad, who became a lawyer, he grew up in Long Island. He was a big Dominique Wilkins fan. I was a Jordan fan. So like literally every year we go to like 2 Knicks games and sit in the 400 level and watch like Jordan score 40 on the Knicks, watch Dominique score 40 on the Knicks. It's like in the late 80s.
Right.
And I remember defending Jordan to people to be like, yeah, he's, because that was the whole like, oh, can he win a championship? And it's like, well, yeah, I think he can. And by the time I graduated high school, he hadn't, but obviously in short order they did.
So you weren't even like a Knicks fan?
No,
because
I was definitely never a Knicks fan.
I never wore Jordans because I was like, I'm a Knicks fan and I cannot wear.
Yeah,
Also,
fuck
they were
Michael Jordan.
expensive, but
Yeah.
really it was just like that.
But you went to the basketball powerhouse, University of Delaware. So
Yes.
But like,
yes.
would you watch like nationally televised games? Were you like looking for those Bulls games and like?
Yeah. I definitely look for those Bulls games. And back then, that's when like WGN or whatever became like one of the super stations.
Yep,
so you could catch Bulls games.
Yeah.
So I definitely remember seeing a lot. I remember hearing stuff on the radio, which is kind of quaint. But basketball.
Listen, we're talking about newspapers and radio.
Basketball's a cool sport on radio though, because there's so much going on. So, and then, obviously through there got into like college basketball and stuff. Obviously not just Delaware.
Right.
We were, we had our moments sort of aside. Like, so when I'm at Delaware, we made the NCAA tournament for the first time.
Wow.
And we're all super excited.
I bet.
Like, yeah, we're going to do whatever. I don't think anyone had illusions of winning the whole thing, but sure, we could have a first round
What
upset.
conference was Delaware
So
in?
it was America East.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
gone through like all different
Yeah,
Jefferson
big
Boston
rival.
University.
I went to BU.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would fuck you up.
So we had but Hartford was in there with when Vin Baker went there.
Yeah.
And, like there was this kid named Eddie Benton who went to Vermont who was really good. Who
There were
knew?
some like SUNY schools.
Yeah. So we make the tournament that first year, and
Vermont.
I think we were at 12 maybe. So 4-12, that's doable.
Yeah.
So the 4 seed we were going to play is Cincinnati. Cincinnati. They murdered us. I was going to say literally murder us. I'm like, nah, it's not literally. But it was literally so our point guard was pretty good for the America East, this kid named Brian Pearl. That game, I remember we all gathered in someone's house to watch. We're all excited. We're going to tape it. By halftime, I think we stopped taping it. And I'm pretty sure at some point we turned it off. Cincinnati beat us by 50. And our point guard would cross half court, get trapped, and throw the ball away. And this happened 10 times in a row. It was literally I don't know if I've seen a worse beating before.
The difference between making it to halftime.
That Cincinnati team made the Final Four that year.
Oh my God.
That was Nick Van Exel.
Yeah.
It was Corey Blunt. It was a bunch of these dudes who ended up being first round picks. And it's just realizing the difference between a decent college team out of a small conference and a monster team in a big conference. Yeah, we were just so demoralized. I think the next year maybe we played Wake Forest, or the next time we made it, and we actually made it a game.
Wow.
And it was oh, this is what we should do. But yeah, that first time was it was just so traumatizing. We were just, blood thrown to the sharks, and it was just
like a 3rd versus 5th grade spelling bee.
Yes, exactly, except with the opposite result. It was a nightmare.
So you graduated having earned a degree in
English/journalism or
Right.
whatever. Yeah,
And-
really valuable now.
But at the time, were you oh, my path is set and I'm gonna go get a job straight out of college?
Yeah. I was pretty sure oh yeah, I'm gonna get with some magazine or some whoever, and
Yeah.
I recently found the folder where I got responses from people, and most of them were the same. They were very encouraging and no, we're not hiring you.
So you would
find
send them
something
writing
else.
samples.
Yeah, where did you apply to?
Clips and everything else. I remember applying to Hit Parader or Circus or one of those metal magazines, which I think was all about access. It's they wanted to hire people who were friends with the bands who could obviously talk to them. And I
Yeah.
was well, if you put me in touch with people, I can write stuff. And they're yeah, no. I don't even remember who all else. It was a ton of different places, though. I mean, it was probably Rolling Stone and places like that. And I guess that's when I realized the value of an internship, which of course I didn't do in college because I was lazy. And had I done that, maybe I would have had a better shot. Instead, so straight out of college, I worked for this paper called the Oxford Tribune in Oxford, Pennsylvania.
Where is that?
It's
Pennsylvania.
No.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is gonna be a running joke.
Google Map this. It's actually really close to the Maryland border, so it's kind of
Where is that?
below Maryland. So it's kind of below Mason-Dixon line, Pennsylvania. Very, very, very small town. The circulation was I don't know, 1,200.
Wow.
It was literally a husband and wife who I think one of them had gone to Delaware. This was literally a favor sort of thing from
Yeah.
one of the professors to be you guys should hire this kid. And it was like a do everything thing. I remember taking their car to drive to the police station to like get the police reports or like develop photos or take photos occasionally.
Wow.
There's definitely a newspaper somewhere with photos I've taken in it.
Wow.
And, cover a lot of those like school board meetings and town hall meetings. The biggest memory I have of that, I forget which one it was, whether it was school board or town hall. Doesn't matter because they were both the same. They were both super boring. You're there to get minutia. You have to stay to the end. And it was the night Michigan played North Carolina in the NCAA final.
The Chris Webber timeout.
Yeah. And I go to this thinking like, I'm going to get out in plenty of time to see this game. And, obviously pre-social media, pre-everything. I don't think I got a cell phone for like 5 years after that.
Yeah.
And sitting in the back watching my watch and watching the clock and like, oh, here's tip off. And people start leaving, and eventually people like literally on the board start leaving, but like it's not over. And one of them at least left and made a joke about going home to watch the game. And I'm just like, this sucks. Like, what am I still doing here? Because I was like a 45-minute drive from where I was living. I was still living in Delaware.
Oh my God.
Well, you weren't even a local. Like you weren't like even living on
Not
in the community that you're covering.
Right. Another potential scandal.
Yeah.
But eventually, it ended, and like I raced home, and I'm pretty sure I did make it in home for the timeout.
Wow.
Like I saw the very end, and I was a Carolina fan, so like as much as I wanted to see the Fab Five do well, because obviously what they meant, I was still rooting for Carolina, and I feel bad for Chris Webber, but I felt most bad for me because I missed like most of the game.
So how long did you stay out there in
Oxford?
I think I was at that. I must have been at that paper for like a year. I mean, it wasn't a super long time.
Yeah.
It was long enough to realize like that was definitely not the path I wanted to do. Like I didn't want to, I guess back then, like that was the path. Like you did this little community writing and like built up to bigger and bigger things. And it's like, I still was more interested in doing like more of the entertainment sports, like non-essential modes. I didn't want to like eventually come to the New York Times and cover school board meetings.
Right.
So I ended up getting hired at this place called Big Shout. Great name.
Yeah.
Entertainment rag in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
That was
the big city.
The big city. Yeah. Essentially like Wilmington's version of like City Paper. Like it was an alt weekly that was a monthly. It was like an alt monthly.
That's the most alt, by the way.
Yes.
We're going to do it monthly.
Super small staff. We could do whatever we wanted, except get paid on time. I forget how much they owed me by the time I left, but it was substantial. And, I dealt with a lot of stuff back then where it's like on the good side, my rent, I think, was like literally like $300 a month in like this renovated apartment in Wilmington.
But those are $90.
$90 and $90 journalism dollars.
Yeah.
The bad was picking which utility to pay that month. Like, do I want to get my phone cut off or my power? I guess I'll pick the phone.
Right.
Or cable. Yeah, we'll lose cable. So that definitely happened a few times. And the capper of it all was one night coming home from something, I don't remember what, I actually got robbed at gunpoint on the steps of the building I lived in.
Oh my God.
That was kind of the end of Wilmington for me. That was like, all right, I'm cool with this. Like my building was decent, but I definitely bordered on like the bad side of town. I was literally a block from like the turnpike.
Yeah.
So like you figure like that's probably not the best area.
Were you like in that moment, or I guess after that moment, were you like, what am I doing here?
After, I was definitely freaked out. At the moment, it wasn't even that bad. It was like, it was some guy asking me for directions to some place. And I like took a half a step down to like talk to him, and he took half a step up, and I looked down, and it's like he's got like a revolver, and it's like, cool. And I just remember like literally turning around to let him take my wallet. I was like, I'm not even going to reach for it. Like, wow. I don't want to do that. Biggest loss of that, I had barely anything in it, but I had managed to somehow keep my student ID through my entire period at Delaware, which was like a miracle. And that, of course, was the end of that. certainly never saw any of that stuff again.
Yeah.
All your
And
student discounts.
yeah, I mean,
At,
come
like,
on,
the
I was
student union.
I needed that for like years to come.
Yeah.
I immediately started looking for another place and ended up moving back to Newark, like back to where the college was.
Yeah.
Newark.
Newark.
Yeah.
And literally
Bengtson.
in that process, before I'd even fully moved out of Wilmington and fully moved into this other place, is when I ended up getting a job at Slam in New York.
Am I correct? You went to school with Jeff Pearlman?
I did.
Was his path anywhere similar to yours, where it was like small town paper to eventually get to the big city?
It was similar. He was responsible. He took like the
in general.
You could look you could look at us both and like do what to do and what not to do. I'd be what not to do because I ended up starting at this like super small thing. Jeff interned with a bunch of big places, including the Nashville Tennessean, who ended up hiring him straight out of school. And I think if you talk to Jeff, and you probably should talk to Jeff. You should probably be talking to Jeff right now.
Wait, get him on the phone.
Hold on. So Jeff got this Tennessean job, and I think he would concur with this and would probably tell a similar story, but better. He kind of thought like, oh, I made it, and just was, pretty arrogant coming out of school. And as you would be, you're 20 years old working for a major daily. And I think they were like, yeah, no. Like, because he wrote a couple things and they were like, yeah, you can't do this. So he got shifted to like the police beat.
Yeah.
And I think he would acknowledge, and I'm not, here I am doing the Jeff Pearlman interview. That kind of helped him get to where he eventually got and where it is now when he's writing a book every year.
Yeah.
And like, seeing him on the New York Times bestseller list is pretty awesome.
Totally.
For someone, I lived with in a connected studio in New York and we watched like the new Chips series and literally every one of Magic Johnson's talk show.
Oh,
we still talk about that. Like
all
that
like
was the
6
Magic
episodes.
Hour. Oh,
Yeah.
it was incredible. It was incredible. I just remember watching that Howard Stern episode and like cringing for Magic, being like, dude, what are you doing to yourself? There's literally a book in that somewhere.
So maybe Jeff will write it in.
Maybe Jeff will write it,
yeah,
and I'll be
New
like,
York Times.
damn it,
Yeah.
why did I pitch this?
So you get the job with Slam, and that means you move up here?
Yeah. That was a weird thing because while I was in the midst of moving was when they decided to get in touch with me. Like, so I'd done a few things for them. I had bothered them nonstop. I probably still have those too because I'm a bit of a hoarder. Like, I probably still have like fax cover sheets from sending stuff to them.
And this is all like front of book stuff, or this is like actual like articles?
This was like front of book stuff. I mean, I pitched them all kinds of wild stuff. Like, I remember hearing about probably through one of their issues that the Jordan was going to retro like the 1 and 3 for the first time and the 2, and I was like, oh man, I got to find a way to get these, and how else should I by going through this publication? I'll write about this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, slow your roll, dude. But they had a pretty small staff too, and I'd gotten like a few front of book things. I wrote a little thing about Sean Bradley that literally like I probably wrote like 900 words and they ended up running it at like 80. It was one of those things where I think I flipped through the front of the book and I'm like, wait, aren't I supposed to be in this issue? Oh, there it is. It's the size of a stamp. Great. Thanks, guys. So
as long as they spelled your name right.
Yeah. My name was like literally half the piece. So, it had to be. So someone there left, or they were going to hire another person, and they wanted to hire me because I guess I'd bothered them enough and they were happy enough with it. But I was between addresses and like my phone had been cut off. So like they tried to get in touch with me and couldn't do it. So this was like just before Christmas, I think, in like 95. I'm going back to the Wilmington apartment to get another load of stuff, and there's a FedEx for me. And it's from them, and they're like, yo, we've been trying to reach you. Like, you need to call us. I'm like, all right, I don't know.
Wait, where was the FedEx? Was it just like on the doorstep?
It was either on the doorstep or they showed up while I was there. Maybe I can't remember exactly which, but I called them and they're like, yo, like we just want you to take an edit test and send it back or whatever. So I got that, and I think I did that over the Christmas holiday at my parents' house on Long Island. Sent it back, and they're like, yeah, we want to hire you. Wow. So I went from like moving all my stuff into this apartment over a skate shop in Delaware, which would have been fun, to moving it all like back to my parents' house to then look for an apartment in the city.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up moving in with Jeff, because he had just gotten the Sports Illustrated job. So he was looking for a place too. And like,
Wow.
all right, cool. We'll just find a place together. And we moved into a place above a Chinese restaurant on the Upper East Side on like 76th Street, something like that.
So and Slam at that time was Harris Publications.
Harris Publications on 23rd Street. Yeah. You know, like we were just a little part of this huge sprawling office that also produced like gun magazines and Vampirella, you know, like, and crossword puzzles. Like weird like place.
Was the Christmas party very strange?
The Christmas party was strange. Yeah. I mean, it ended up being big. You know, if it was just a Slam Christmas party, it would have been like 5 people. That would have been very awkward.
Yeah.
So, you know, being Harris like made it more interesting. And a lot of people you didn't talk to very much, and then you got to see drunk. But
So what was your sort of like eye-opening moment once you stepped into that office?
you know, man, that's hard. I don't know if there really was one specific one. It was definitely a lot different going from like this complete DIY like monthly thing where it's like we would literally drive pages to Maryland to get printed and drop them off at like, you know, God, 8 in the morning or whatever, and then go straight to the bar.
Yeah.
On the way home. But and wait for them to get printed basically and then go pick them all up.
Yeah.
To this, which was obviously way more of a professional operation, you know, and I think this was obviously the first time where it's like, oh, this is like, we're really serious about this. Like, you know, we're going to read each story 3 times before it goes to layout and then read it 3 times in layout. And like, you know, by the time it actually gets printed, like literally a month later, you're like, I never want to read this again. Like, this is cool that I wrote this, but like, I'm so sick of it by the time it comes out. And I think, you know, that kind of became the norm. You know, that's what I got used to eventually before the internet came and took all the magazines away. But you know, it was a much more like actual professional thing, or like, and there would be things like, you know, before the whole NBA photography library got digitized, you know, we would go to Secaucus, to like NBA Entertainment.
Oh my God.
And flip through like files of slides and prints and stuff. And it's like, you're looking at these prints from like the ABA from like the 70s. And
That's
it's
so
like, damn,
dope.
this is amazing. Like, I wanted to spend like days there.
Yeah.
And that ended up being one of my responsibilities early on. So it's like, oh, I'm psyched to do this.
What was your first position there?
It was just senior editor. You know, none of those titles mean anything.
Yeah, wait.
They're like,
just
all right,
senior editor.
Yeah, but like, you know, there was no junior editor. It was like you're senior editor or you don't work there. You know, like the person below me was like the intern. So it sounds great. It looks good on a masthead, but you know, it didn't really mean much.
What was the first piece that you worked on that you were just like, wow, I can't believe that my name is in print. I put all this work in and there it is. I can go to a newsstand and actually pick it up.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple. I mean, like the first, like I think feature I wrote maybe was on like Clyde Drexler.
Wow.
And I didn't even talk to him for it. Like I barely.
It
had
was a
sources
write-around
for
on
that.
Clyde
Yeah. Which is kind of embarrassing, given that I've talked to him a bunch since then. And
Yeah.
like, it wouldn't have been that hard.
By the way, that's a cool flex.
Yeah.
But one of the, I mean,
is this Portland Clyde or is this
this
Houston
would have been
Clyde?
Houston Clyde.
Okay.
This would have been Houston Clyde. And I ended up having like a string of stories where like I had to cover people who didn't want to talk to me. Like, so there's 2 in particular that were right around the same time. Houston, Scottie Pippen.
Okay.
And like, I'm super psyched as a Bulls fan. Like, yo, Scottie Pippen, like I get to write a feature on Pippen. And like, of course, though, like I'm young, I want to talk to him about the Bulls, and like he wanted to talk about the Bulls, not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So like we had a lot of very short conversations where he would agree to talk, and I would ask him something about Chicago, and he'd be like, I don't have time right now. But back then, when magazines actually had money, like, you know, I was in Houston for like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 days. So like it was like 2 games and 3 practices and a shoot around, and like, you know, I was just there all the time. So I ended up talking to everybody else. You know, and this is like Hakeem in Houston and Barkley.
Yeah.
And like, I remember Barkley coming into the locker room one day, like after I'd been there for a few days already. And he's like, you're here again? Like, why don't you go home? I'm like, all right, I made it. You know, and it's like, you're seeing him leave after games and pick up like 3 like 16-ounce like buds on the way out the door.
You're like, basketball.
Yeah, no. And like, oh man, who was it? Like the early days of like Steve Francis and Katino Mobley,
Oh, okay,
but they were
yeah.
like super young. But yeah, like so Scotty ended up being kind of a jerk the whole time, which is whatever. Scotty's a little temperamental anyway, I feel like.
He's going through a rough time right now.
Yes, now, yeah. But it worked out. And then, I did one on Gary Payton. And even before I went out to Seattle, like the PR person was like, he's not going to do it if it's not a cover. And we're like, yeah, well, it's not a cover. And we're still doing it. And I think maybe I was only there for one game and like a couple practices, and like he didn't talk at practice, but everyone else was great. And, Nate McMillan was good. Brent Barry was great at the beginning of a long, wonderful friendship. And they were playing the Lakers, and I went up to him before the game, and I'm like, I know you don't talk pregame or whatever. I know you don't want to really talk about this stuff, but like, look, we're doing the story anyway. And he's like, you know what, like, I'm going to talk to the group after the game. You're welcome to ask questions then. I'll answer whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. We're good. So in the press seats watching the game, and they're winning late. I forget, what the situation was exactly, but they end up blowing it. They end up losing at home to the Lakers. And the Lakers like weren't very great at this point. Like they should have won this game. And we all go in the locker room, and we're standing around Peyton's locker. And he just starts getting dressed, and he's not saying anything. And there was a point along there where I'm like, he's not going to talk. He's just going to go home. And that's what he did. Like he just got dressed and went home. And I'm like, well, this was my one chance to get him, and I didn't. So that was yet another, complete right around. This was probably the best right around of all. So I love J.R. Rider. JR, I've always been a fan, like since Minnesota, dunk contest stuff. So he's on the Hawks, and I'd been trying to do a Rider story for a while. And finally we're like, all right, I'm going to go out to Atlanta and do this. And this was literally like when I'd first gotten a cell phone, and I didn't realize whatever plan I was on, like my phone literally only worked in New York. Like I get to Atlanta, I turn it on, and like I got nothing. Like great. So I'm stuck to my hotel room. And Lang Whitaker, who I ended up hiring him at Slam, and like now he's off doing his own thing with the Grizzlies. He was kind of my guide in Atlanta. Like he used to go to Hawks games. He knew the Hawks guys. He knew JR a little bit. And at that point, like JR had been having issues with management. I guess that's the polite way to put it. So we go to this game, and like JR ends up being late again. And I talked to a bunch of his teammates, and like, it was crazy. One of the things I remember, like, there was all this talk about him being a bad influence and, being a terrible guy to have around. And it's like, I go into the Hawks locker room, and his locker was right between the two rookies. And I'm like, if this is literally the guy you want, like, not influencing people, why do you have him between, like, and it was Jason Terry, who obviously got influenced into playing for 20 years. Like, he's still going. And Deion Glover, who didn't last quite as long, but, and I end up talking to a bunch of guys, and JR's not there. Go to the other side and come out, and Lang comes up to me like when the game's about to start or a little before when the locker room's closed. He's like, yo, like JR got there, but he's in the office with the coach and the GM, and like they're yelling at each other. Like, oh, this seems bad. Game starts. He comes out like 10 minutes into the first quarter in street clothes. Some point, they're passing sheets around like later in the game being like, the Hawks will address the J.R. Rider situation following the game. So, ridiculous story short, like he gets cut that day.
Oh my God.
And like I was supposed to talk to him at practice the next day. Clearly he's not going to go to practice because he just got cut.
Right.
And I just remember like calling his phone and getting his voicemail, and like we never talked for that either. Damn. And it was a great place to be, but it was like, yeah, that was yet another like, all right, I guess I'm not talking to the primary subject.
Hey guys, we just want to take 1 second to remind you that at itsthereal.com/shop, you can get our rhyme book, a lined notebook that is filled with It's the Real goodness. And you want to know what? People say that they want to buy regular Mead notebooks or 5-star notebooks. And whatever bullshit notebooks there are on sale at Office Depot.
Do not do that.
Fuck that.
Do not do that.
Go get yourself an It's the Real rhyme book today.
Listen, guys, you're better than that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to hear that. You want to know that you are better than just a spiral notebook. This is a bound notebook. Okay?
Yes. Tell him.
This is This is not one of your normal school notebooks.
No.
Show off.
Yeah. Like when we talk about like that G class,
Yeah.
when we talk about that Rolls Royce
Yes.
of notebooks, that's what this is.
This is the Maybach.
Maybach. Notebook. That's what this is.
So go get that notebook. Time wasters, quotes from the podcast, lots of space for you to write
No, it
down
doesn't even matter about that.
everything in your life.
No, just people.
Just
like,
look cool.
You're gonna look cool when you hold this thing.
Write out rhyme book.
Rhyme book music.
And now back to the podcast. What did you get from going to NBA practices?
That was just the chance to really get time with guys. You know, like before a game or after a game, it would eventually lead up to like a lot of big time guys wouldn't talk at all pregame, period. You know, that's, and I don't know if that was Jordan's fault or like people following his lead or like, you know, they just didn't want to. Like Kevin Garnett literally would not talk to you pregame. Like some guys, like they wouldn't do an interview, but you could like just talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
KG, like nothing. And like, even when I got to know him, like he would walk in and like punch me in the chest basically when he walked by. That was his acknowledgement, but he wouldn't say anything. But then post game was always a crapshoot. You know, if they had a bad game or if their team lost, like you're not going to get much out of them. And for us at Slam, like especially earlier, because that was before we had a website and, you know, you're literally just there to get stuff for something. Like now you use literally everything you get.
Yeah.
But back then it's like a side conversation with someone, like you're not even going to tape it because like, what are you going to use it for? So we'd have to not only deal with players who'd be upset, but then you have beat writers who clearly needed whatever they could get that night. And we're just like, well, whatever. We're working on a story a month out and we want to ask some random stuff. So, you know, it was always a bit of a challenge. Practice was a little easier because you could just grab a guy. There were fewer media people to deal with.
Yeah.
Guys are more likely to talk about random stuff. One funny thing with Lang, I remember he was at a Knicks game to do a story on Rashid, and I forget whether he was on the Pistons at that point or on Detroit. And
Wait, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
the Blazers
Yeah.
for Detroit. So Sheed, again, he didn't talk pregame, and Sheed's like, no, I got you postgame. And postgame comes around, and Sheed had, you know, he was always a guy that the rest of the media went to, and they all went to him, and he's like, no, I'm only talking to him, pointing at Lang. And this super uncomfortable thing unfolded where Sheed literally would answer all of Lang's questions, and the rest of the national media is assembled around Sheed needing quotes about the game, but he wouldn't talk to any of them. So at one point, Lang, like, because all these guys are around, he started asking Sheed questions about the game, even though he didn't need the stuff for like what he was working on, but he's just like, maybe if Sheed talks about the game, these people will go away. And eventually they did. But I feel like we had a lot of moments like that just because like at the time, like the pre-blog era, you know, us at Slam were the people they could relate to.
Yeah.
We were the guys closest to their age and like interested in the things they were interested in. So, you know, rather than being a 55-year-old white beat writer.
Right.
So we could have conversations with these guys. So like, you know, when the Lakers and Kobe came to town, like they wanted to talk to us or Iverson.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when we did the first Allen Iverson cover when he was on the Sixers, the Who's Afraid of Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
I remember like bringing an issue to him in the locker room and I gave it to him and he gave me like a hug. And it's like, wow, all right. Like these guys are like psyched about this, like to have this outlet.
Yeah.
So just that aspect of it back then was amazing.
Was there a chip on your shoulder in terms of like the bigger publications, like that you guys were like the underdogs, that you guys had a different point of view?
Right, as opposed to like more establishment places like Sports Illustrated or Sporting News or wherever else.
Yeah, I mean, we were different too. You know, it's like we were almost like an entertainment publication for basketball because we would do shoots with these guys and like, you know, they'd be excited to do it, like to be on the cover. And like it eventually became sort of a running joke about like mean mugging on the cover. You know, it's like, oh, you're not going to smile for a Slam cover. You know, and there were certainly difficulties with getting some of this stuff done with certain people and at certain times, but you know, that was more just an aspect of like, that's how they were. You know, I remember, to go back, you asked about the one moment, like, and the first cover story I wrote and the one I'm still like the most psyched on was the Allen Iverson blowout when he had the fro.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I don't remember exactly why I didn't go, but like I wasn't at the cover shoot. But I remember Tony Gervino, the editor-in-chief at the time, like telling me about it. And like he was like 7 hours late. And it's like, that's like literally like, I don't think you can, I don't know if you could be more late than that because certainly it would get canceled.
Yeah.
But we were shooting him at the same time as like The Source was doing their sports magazine. And we were both shooting him that day. And we had this idea to do that Dr. J pose and do the blowout. But we didn't want anyone else to really get that. So we had to hire his hair person to like unbraid his hair and pick it out for the shoot and then braid it back before he went in to do another shoot.
Wow.
Well, that's why he was 7 hours late.
I mean, God knows what time he ended up finishing that. The funny like continuation of that is for the next Iverson cover, I didn't write the story, but I did go to the cover shoot. Like I was the editor-in-chief at the time. And we ended up going to Philly to shoot him. And we dealt with like the Sixers PR, like, yeah, he's ready. He knows you guys are doing it. It's right after practice. So we get set up in this room. It's Clay Patrick McBride, who had shot the previous one.
Yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah,
great
he's
photographer.
He's great.
Yeah.
So we're all set up, all the lights, all of everything. We did test shoots and practice ends. And she's like, all right, I'll go get him. And she goes for a while, comes back by herself and is like, yeah, he left. And it's just like, we drove to Philadelphia in a van. Like we had all this photo stuff set up and it's like, no one can call him or like go. And it's like, no, he's just gone.
Everybody has local plans just like you. It only works in New York.
I mean, I just remember like talking Clay down. I feel like the whole ride back to be like, yo, like, I don't know. Like, it's not you. It's not. And the epilogue of that was like, the story was done. Like we're already like, this is the cover. So he was like walking through the tunnel to go out for a game and they literally pulled him into a side room. Clay got like 5 frames. You know, it's like nothing. But Iverson, and God love, like every frame was good and every frame could have been a cover.
Wow.
And they were all different. Like he was just great. Like I remember with other guys flipping through like 100 shots and being like,
nothing.
I don't know what we're going to do with this. Like this shoot is just awful. And it's not the photographer's fault. It's just like they don't have it. But Iverson was just like, you know, getting him in the room was impossible. But once you did get him in the room,
That's so dope.
he was incredible.
Who's somebody who had the charisma to be a star but didn't have the skills to be a star that Slam was like totally behind?
You know, it's hard to say. Like, I feel like it's almost unfair to say he wasn't a star, but like Stephon Marbury could have been a lot bigger.
Starberry.
You know, Starberry.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, his talent was there. He had like the story, you know, obviously like He Got Game is essentially the Stephon Marbury story. You know, he had the heart too. Like, and I think like he kind of got treated unfairly with some of this stuff. I remember it's really funny. Like, so, I'm probably blocked by a lot of people on Twitter, but Bill Simmons is one of them. And like, I've been blocked by Bill Simmons since Twitter started. And literally the start of our sort of animosity was when he was still the Boston sports guy. And he wrote something about Marbury. And I remember like sending him this impassioned email back, like really pissed off. Because at that point I was going to all these Nets games and God knows why. Because it was close and because not as many, it wasn't as bad fighting media in Jersey as it was in New York. You know, but his whole thing was like, Steph doesn't want to win. He doesn't care about winning. He just cares about himself. And I'm like, dog, like you don't go to games. Like you go, but you sit in the stands. Like you've never been in a locker room at that point. Like I am there. Like I see how Steph reacts if he scores 35 and they lose, or if he scores 12 and they win. And like, dude is not like mad if he has a bad night and they win. Like he clearly wants to win. The Nets are clearly bad.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think you can put this all on him. And I think
Right, put on Keith Van Horn.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of stuff did get put on Steph that he didn't deserve. And, you know, he probably could have done a better job with some of this stuff. Everyone else could have done a better job. But, you know, it's just luck of the draw to some extent where you end up. Although it is funny, like, so we did a cover with Chris Webber and Jason Williams in Sacramento. And that was supposed to be a split cover. We were supposed to do those guys in the West and Marbury and Van Horn on the East. And I did the story. I went to New York to see them in a preseason game. Like, they each scored like 35. Like, they had a great game. Like, they seemed to be getting along well. And the Nets opened the season like 1-10.
Oh.
At, like, right before we go to press. And it's like, we just can't do this as a cover.
Yeah.
And like, we ended up doing the story, but like, yeah, the chance of that would have been like, I mean, we did the Nets on the cover a couple times,
right,
but that would have been yet another one, I guess, local bias for us. But
yeah.
So how did you ascend to being becoming editor-in-chief?
Oh, I mean, that was easy. Tony Gervino, the editor-in-chief before me, left. Like,
I thought you were going to be like, I stabbed a bunch of people in the back.
yeah.
You're not going to take me alive.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we were pretty small, and like, he got an offer to run like the NBA's magazines, to do Hoop and Inside Stuff. And like, you know, I assume it was a decent offer. Like, I don't think he would have left otherwise, but he'd been there for a while. You know, and I was kind of his protege. You know, like, we viewed a lot of things the same way. We had similar backgrounds and things. Like, you know, I knew The Voice at that point. You know, I was writing almost all of that noise, the little like one-liner things, which I always say was like my training for Twitter. Like, that's where I knew I'd be good at that, because I already did like a lot of just one sentence things. You know, I was answering like reader mail or like, and I'd written a bunch of features at that point. So there was a lot that was going to be involved, and I was like, man, am I sure I can do this, or do I really want to do this? But like, I don't know. I mean, since then I've realized that's every job.
Well, what's the difference between just, you know, being a writer and working for people and being management?
Well, I mean, that was it. Like, you know, at that point, it wasn't a lot as far as managing people. You know, like, there was a managing editor. She handled a lot of the deadlines and stuff. Thank God, because I'm terrible at that stuff. And dealing with actually other writers. But, you know, I think the biggest thing is like, as a senior editor, like, I could make decisions or I could claim, you know, credit for things, but like, you could sort of pick and choose. And obviously when you're editor in chief, it's like, well, this is all on you. And there were a lot of like, kind of, especially then, like, sleepless nights where it's like, oh man, like, I hope this guy doesn't get traded. Like, we just shot him for the cover and it doesn't come out for a month, you know, or God, I hope this guy doesn't like get hurt or fall off or whatever, or, you know, God forbid, get arrested, or, you know, just something. Like, I hope something doesn't happen. And like, in a way that was like, what do I want to say? Like, it supported some of my like worst instincts. Like, I'm terrible at like putting things off. If you talk to my girlfriend or anybody, like, I'm like the worst procrastinator. And a lot of times with like the letter from the editor, which would always be the last thing to get written, you know, it's like, I would want to push it as long as possible because I knew there'd be this huge gap. So it's like, I want to keep it as close as possible to being like current, but like, there was no way you could. Like, everything was just, oh God, like, I hope this works.
Yeah.
The one that worked out great, and it's still kind of my proudest cover, was Shaq and Kobe. And I remember like talking to the photographer, talking to whoever was talking, and I'm like, yo, like, get them to like point at their ring finger. And like, Kobe didn't do it, but Shaq did. And Shaq has this really devilish grin on his face, you know, pointing at his ring finger. And this was before they'd won a title, and they did end up winning that year. And like, it was a pretty safe bet. But at the same time, like, nothing's settled until it's done. I mean, ask the Warriors, I guess. So like, that could have been really, you know, that could have been a really bad one, but it ended up being great.
Yeah. Can you talk about Shaq's energy?
Shaq was amazing. I mean, Shaq is still amazing. Like, I've done things with him post-retirement, and like, I remember like, I wrote the cover story on him when he came to the Heat, and like, I think I was on the phone with him for like close to an hour, and I think I asked like 3 questions. Like, he would just get going, and you're just like, oh my God, like, I don't need to change any of this. Like, I think I ended up writing that one as an as told to, because there was literally no other way to do it. Like, he was just so like effusive about everything.
Yeah.
And like, he was just, I don't know, like, Shaq was one of those dudes who like came into the league as a brand. Like, he already knew like that's what he wanted to do. Like, I remember that, was it a New York Times magazine cover story on him, I think, when he first came to Orlando, and like, he'd already signed with like Reebok and Pepsi, and you know, he was just one of those guys who knew right away, like, what he wanted to do and where he wanted to take things. Like, it's a weird comparison, but Nigel Sylvester reminds me a lot of Shaq, where it's like they're great at what they do, you know, whether it's basketball or BMX, but they're looking at that as like a way to get somewhere. And they've both managed to like go and do it. Like it's amazing to watch people do that.
That makes me think, like, what would Shaq look like on a bike?
Ooh. You remember the Taco Bell ad where he was on a bike?
No.
He was on it. Oh my God, you guys need to look this up. He did a Taco Bell ad. He's on a tandem with Akeem Olajuwon.
Is this, how big is that
It was
bike?
real.
Like
it's
filmed or is
massive.
this print?
No, it's filmed.
Oh.
It's filmed. At the end, they're like riding it and they have like propeller beams on or something. I don't know who came up with the idea. I don't know who
genius.
sold it to them.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's the kind of thing Shaq would be like, yeah, let's do it. And Akeem would be like, I don't know what we're doing, but sure. But yeah, I hope that bike is like in the Smithsonian or something.
Obviously Clay Patrick McBride, but who were some of the other amazing photographers you worked with while at Slam?
Well, Jonathan Mannion.
Oh man, yeah.
You know,
He's okay.
like,
Yeah.
and him getting to do stuff like, so
Shouts
that's
to Jonathan Mannion.
Yeah.
the first time I literally worked with him was doing this Kevin Garnett cover in Minnesota. And we met up at the Mall of America, which I realized after the fact was probably a horrible idea because there's like 8 of each store in that place. There was like a Snoopy amusement park in the middle of it. You know, somehow we find each other. And we go out to Garnett's house to do the shoot. And he was living in this like non-gated, gated community. Like there wasn't really like security, but like the houses were kind of close. And I'm like, wow, like, you know, it's like obviously an upscale neighborhood, but it's like, you're Kevin Garnett. Like he, at that point he was building this huge like compound, which I think he might still have. I don't know how you sell stuff like that.
Right.
So he just didn't have it ready yet. And like his yard looked out on like a stream in the backyard. He had a cage with his pit bulls in it. Little circular driveway with just a wheel around basketball hoop. And
I'm sold. I'll take it.
Yeah.
But he came
That's
out,
how you sell it.
He came out in his driveway like in full T-Wolves uniform, which is super surreal. But Jonathan, like at that point, had already done like Reasonable Doubt and DMX and all this other stuff. So he was in the habit of like to get guys, you know, who maybe didn't know who he was, like he would show him his book.
Yeah.
And I just remember KG is like, you know, obviously like this upper Pantheon NBA guy flipping out over this other stuff. You know, and like
That's so awesome.
he was like, you know, DMX or whatever, and Jonathan's like, yo, if you want to talk to him, I can call him. He's like, no, like, don't do that. But we spent like literally all day at his house, and he actually left before we did. We were still like breaking down, and he had to go to the Vikings game that night in his Ferrari, I think.
As one does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had like a 2-car garage, like a Ferrari and like a Range Rover, whatever the NBA like starter kit was with those. So he had one of those like, or 2 of those like outdoor speakers that look like rocks. We were shooting him outside.
Yeah.
So he's playing Mobb Deep the whole day. And it was Murda music, which was brand new. And he kept playing, I can't remember the name of the track. What's the track with Nas on it, on that one?
I don't know.
Yeah, I remember.
Whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So he's playing that one over and over again to memorize like Nas's verse. And by the end of the day, I'd heard this record like 100 times. And I'm like, all right, I got to go get this. And I remember like driving to the airport. I see a record store. I pull over and I'm like, yo, like, do you have Murda music or whatever? He's like, oh, that doesn't come out for like 2 weeks. You asshole. Like, you know, KG was, and he was getting, I seem to remember, like, he had, like, envelopes from, like, he was getting stuff from record companies at that point. So, like, yeah, that's still, like, one of my favorite Mobb Deep records, probably partially because of that.
He just brainwashed you into loving it.
I feel like that one's kind of underrated anyway.
Was there an NBA coach that you had a personal, like, affection for? Like, just, like, someone who was just really good to you?
Or someone who you fucking hated.
Most coaches were good. I mean, Popovich was always the one you were scared of, you know, and it's like, I remember being in a Knick game. I was writing something on Kobe and like definite like cold sweats, like, man, I'm going to ask Greg Popovich this kind of open-ended question about Kobe and like, he's going to murder me. Like he's either going to shut me down or, you know, he's just going to give me a look that's going to make me never cover a basketball game again. And he ended up being great.
Well, he's like the most erudite, like woke,
yeah,
like
yeah,
amazing,
yeah. And
well-read.
I think, he kind of knows what people want or what people need. Like, I think sometimes he is like overly hard on people where it's like, yo, this is just some poor beat writer or some poor, like, local TV guy, obviously just trying to get a soundbite, and you're really giving him a hard time over something.
Right.
But, I asked him some like super open-ended Kobe question, and he was like perfect.
Amazing.
Like, he gave me this great answer. Maybe it was because I waited till everyone else left, and kind of tracked him down.
What, followed him home?
Follow him to his car.
Yeah.
Like, no, most guys were good. Like, I know, like, some of the local Jersey guys did not like, what's his name? I hate when I forget names.
Byron Scott.
No, well, Byron Scott was terrible. The Kentucky coach. Why?
Calipari.
Calipari.
Yeah.
When he first came to the NBA, was super young, super like full of himself.
Yeah.
Like, was kind of a dumpster fire. Some of the Knicks coaches weren't that great. Like,
What? Our
some of
Knicks?
who I was most intimidated by was Ewing.
Wow.
Like, Ewing would come in the locker room like dribbling very aggressively down the hall, like, to his chest, and like Patrick Ewing's chest is up here, all wrapped in ice. He would go sit in his locker and be like, tell the PR guy, like, all right, I'm ready. And like, he would talk for literally like probably 3 minutes and just be done. And that was it. And it's like, I don't think I said anything to him for like the first like 2 years.
Wow.
Which was good. Like, the first time I actually ended up sitting down with him to talk to him, like, he was great.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think he remembered like that I didn't give him a hard time maybe, or didn't bother him. I was harmless.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of where we were at anyway.
Do you find that most of the guys would read clips about themselves?
Yeah, I think guys would read stuff. And the thing is about Slam, and like, we would get a hard time about it from even beat writers, where it's like, oh, you guys are just like fans basically. And it's like, well, on the one hand, yeah, we kind of are. There is a little access side to it, but there is also a side to it where like, yeah, we're basketball fans first. Like, we weren't trying to hide that, I don't think. There were times that kind of played negatively with PR people. I remember like being in the visitors locker room. I think they might have been playing the Celtics. This is when the Celtics weren't good. Mm-hmm. And there was some dude there who was on like a 10-day. And we had done like, maybe we had a photographer at games or something during that time, and we got a good shot of this dude, and we wanted to give it to him because it's like, yo, like, you're not going to be in the NBA very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went to give it to him, and one of the Knicks PR guys was like, hey, I want to talk to you after the game. All right, whatever. He basically accused me of getting this guy's autograph, and I'm like, dog, like, he's literally no one.
Right.
Like, I'm in these locker rooms all the time. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like,
That's
I'm
nuts.
not that dumb.
Right.
And it ended up being okay, but like, there was always like the weird tension sometimes with stuff like that, where it's like, you guys are fans, and it's like, we were aware too, like, letting beat writers do their jobs. Like, we're not trying to like, duck in while you're trying to ask what it was like in the last play to be like, hey, do you remember college? Like, we would try and save that stuff. But
What's it like playing with Ray Allen?
yeah. Like, Ray Allen, I would talk to him about what books he was reading, because he would always have books with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you would try to find those little things, or like, I remember one year it was either DC or Philly All-Star. They were like back to back, I think. And I was in the West locker room, and I was talking to Kobe, and I just sat next to him, and like, we're talking about whatever. They were playing the Nets, I think, coming straight out of the All-Star break. So it's like, we're just bullshitting. Like, I'd known him, like, I first dealt with him like when he was in high school. It was a high school at McDonald's game. And we're just talking, and at one point I remember like looking up, kind of, I don't know, to see who else was around or whatever. And like, the national media at All-Star would move as like kind of a group and like get each guy, and they're all around us, like waiting for Kobe. And I'm just like, I'll catch you later. We should let these guys do their jobs, I guess. But I mean, that was always the fun part of it. It's like developing relationships with guys that you could turn into something else, instead of like, you wouldn't have to be confrontational from the jump.
Right. How did your time at Slam end?
It didn't end great.
Okay.
I think like part of it was the time, part of it was me. Obviously, I was still, I don't know how old I was at the end of that. I mean, I was in my early 30s. I was been doing this a little bit. Like, I was making a decent living for New York. Like, and I think like whatever. Some of it was my work habits. Some of it was probably, oh, wow, we can replace this guy for like half of what he's making. So, I mean, I'm still on good terms with all the people there. I understand, why it ended. And it ended up being, unfortunately, a weird time. Like, I thought, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to step right into something else. And this was in, like, the mid-2000s when the bottom fell out of everything.
Right.
I had, like, there were situations, like, someone from SI hit me up and was like, yo, like, we definitely want you to come here and write for us and do basketball and whatever else. And I ended up meeting with, like, I'm spacing on his name too, but like the big time editor there, like who'd been there forever, and they were all psyched and were kicking ideas around. And literally like in that same week, like they found out like their revenues were way down from what they were and they were letting people go. And I'm like, okay, if they're letting go like their own writers, they're not going to pay me to do stuff. So, that's one of the unfortunate things of that.
Sure.
It's been way more interesting and way more, I guess, lucrative being a free agent now than it was in 2004.
Sure. But was the next stop Complex?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I did a lot of things, I did a lot of freelance back then. It's funny, like I moved right from being editor-in-chief of Slam to being like a contributing editor and writing for them. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of doubling up at that point early on. Like if I was smarter with money, I would have done a better job. But, I was like getting severance from them and getting paid freelance when they were still paying a good rate for freelance. So like, that was a good thing. But of course I stayed in my way too expensive apartment that would be expensive now. Way
on the Upper East Side? Still?
No, I was in like I don't even know what the hell the neighborhood is. I was on 30th and 5th.
Oh. So you were saying in the Empire State Building?
Yes. You could actually
way too expensive. Yeah.
Like the Empire State Building was uptown from me. My window looked down, but you could see the Empire State Building reflected in the window across the street, which probably made my rent higher.
So by the time you got to Complex, you're respected for your basketball knowledge, obviously. You're respected for your shoe knowledge.
Your beard?
And your beard.
Somewhat.
Okay.
It was a little sketchy in those days, I feel like.
How much did you love or not love the internet?
I mean, look, the internet was cool. Like the internet had started kicking in like seriously when I was a Slam and we hired Lang and like, he was writing like one thing a day and that was a lot. That seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
Lengths was like crazy. It was like, wow, we're writing something. And, by the time I got to Complex, obviously you're doing like 800 things a day and like, getting chained to like Google Analytics and whatever other like metrics.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was obviously a big change, because at Slam, it was more like, the feedback came in the form of letters, a lot of which came from jail and like, people sending drawings and like, being super
that must be the best, by the way.
Oh, it was
like
amazing.
Getting these like envelopes that just have like, the most work put into them.
Oh, yeah. You could tell people really cared about it. And like, we would try our best to like answer most of the ones we ran at least. And obviously, but the thing was like, it was super positive, but it was super delayed. You're getting letters about stuff. It's like, wait, I wrote that. And to go from that to like this more like instant feedback.
Yeah.
I was definitely slow to sign up to Twitter. I was just like, what the hell is this? Like, why do I want to do this? And thinking about that now is like this infernal torture machine that I log into every minute of every day.
Right.
Yeah. Like, thanks a lot. But, to go from the print thing to like, you need to do X amount of stories a day and like, we need to get X amount of traffic per month. And it's just like, wow, this is insane.
Yeah.
Especially in those days, I mean, there definitely was like this, super focus on like, well, we need to hit this certain page view count. And it's like, if you're not close by the end of the month, that's when you start throwing everything overboard. And it's like, do this list of 100 things with 100 pages. And even then there was like, wait a minute, why are we going to kill ourselves at the end of the month when we could just like use this like to start the month and maybe like, not be so far behind instead of like throwing everything overboard at the end and then the month changes and you're like, all right, now what do I do? And it was just this super like, I mean, I don't know. I'm curious how history will treat those times. Looking back, it'd be like, what's wrong with you people?
Oh, yeah.
you know, similar to the ever popular pivot to video, you know, which was also part of this whole thing.
Right. Were there any stories that you wanted to do while at Slam that you were able to do at Complex?
I don't know if I really had stuff like that. I mean, I feel like...
Would you get in trouble if you admitted it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only thing was, and the freedom of that was, you know, with the internet is like, you know, it's this bowl with a hole in it that you're trying to fill every day. So it's like, you know, you could write as many things in a week at Complex as you wrote in a year at Slam. I mean, Slam was very like, all right, we need to fill this portion of the feature well and this portion of this. And like, if you do write about this guy, you can't write about this guy until the next issue, which is a month and a half from now. And by then, who knows? So, you know, with Complex and with the internet in general, it's like anytime an interview got offered, you could take it. So I think it was more of a case of like being able to reconnect with people who I knew through doing stuff at Slam. And, you know, if it was someone like Allen Iverson, like, oh, I have a history with this guy. So like, he's going to be more willing to open up. And like, we have a starting point, which was good, you know, I think for a lot of those things. You know, I think especially in the early days of Complex, there was definitely still that, well, if it's not in print, I don't know if we want to do it. And, you know, if it's not in print, we're probably not doing like a photo shoot or whatever. And like, you know, I remember trying to explain to like publicists or whatever, it's like, no, this is going to be on the main page for X amount of time. And like this amount of people are going to look at it. And you can actually find out how many people look at it.
Yeah.
As opposed to a magazine story, which is like, well, we could tell you what our circulation is, but what does that even mean? You know, half those copies probably get pulped anyway. So like, who knows what that is? I don't know.
It's at a dentist's office.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, 10 people for every one person.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, but there was definitely that awkward transitional phase when publicists knew print, and that just wasn't the thing anymore.
Totally. Oh, selling artists on coming up here to the Upper West Side to sit in our apartment and talk for an hour was like the craziest idea like 3 years ago. Now it's just like understood. It's
well,
like,
I mean, not understood. It's still like, wait, it's your apartment? And
right.
It's like, yes.
So,
but it's New York, people. Come on.
Yeah.
I think you were very ahead of the time in terms of the video content that you would do with Clark on shoes. Do you feel the same?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I do. And
It's a hard hitting question.
Right.
But that was the thing, like, you know, NCB came up with that and sold us on that. And, you know, I had known Clark a little bit, like we did stuff for Kicks, and like I had spoken to him before, and like we'd obviously run in some of the same sneaker circles. Can't believe I just said that. That's like the nerdiest thing I've ever said in my life.
Ladies.
But I mean, I think we knew pretty early on that we were going to get along and that, you know, we could turn this into something because, you know, even though we're both like kind of, I guess, elder statesmen of the sneaker scene, Clark will probably murder me for even saying that. But, you know, we came at it from enough of a different perspective. You know, even now it's like, you know, Clark obviously gets stuff through the entertainment side and does stuff through the entertainment side. I was used to doing it through the media side, which is, you know, a different thing. And we both grew up, obviously, you know, being super into sneakers, but like from slightly different angles and with slightly different perspectives. So, you know, I think from the start, like we didn't need much prompting to make something that worked. You know, we filmed those earliest episodes on 23rd Street in Mark Echo's like giant freaking office with the basketball hoop and a kitchen in it.
And also a giant rhino.
Yeah. And like, we didn't have to do much to have like a set because like he had all the bookshelves and Little Penny and whatever else. So like, you know, we would just throw a few shoes up and that was it and just kind of talk.
Yeah.
And like, literally like the guests we would start getting like just came from Clark's Rolodex. You know, it's like, yeah, just call Spike Lee and get him to come on, or call Patrick, you know, get Patrick Ewing on here somehow. And like, you know, some of those, like I think Dikembe came through, it was through Adidas, but you know, they had relationships. Like Clark pulled Dikembe on stage, like at Georgetown or whatever it was, you know, when he was DJing. And it's like, there was this natural entry point for all these people. You know, Spike, I knew from Knick games, you know, from riding up the elevator with him, like at the Garden, or like, he's like one of those, you know, people would always ask like, oh, you live in New York. Like, who have you bumped into on the street? And it's like, Spike would always be someone I'd run into sometimes. Be like, oh my God, what are you doing out here? So, you know, it was a very natural thing to get into. And I do think we were like ahead of our time, you know, and I think, you know, if that show was approached differently, or if had it continued, I think we could have made more of it. You know, it's like, I remember like having all these meetings where it's like, you know, the show is going to be like 8 minutes long, and it's like 8 minutes. Like, we would talk to Fat Joe for an hour,
right,
and then it would get cut down to like 4 minutes, and it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
You know, or like,
but that was at a time when everybody was like, oh, well, everybody's attention spans are just going to be like 30 seconds.
Right.
And like the sweet spot for internet videos is either 2 minutes or nothing.
Yeah. No, and I remember even talking to people, like, even when, you know, we were between seasons or whatever, it's like, yo, like, can't you release like the full interviews? Like,
right.
They're all good. Like, you know, and we'd have stuff where, like, you know, Swizz Beatz came and he was on when we were in Brooklyn. We actually had, that was the magical year of Quick Strike, where we actually had a real set.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he drove there in his McLaren, pulled into, you know, because it had like a garage door, and pulls in it, and has like his uncle or whoever with him.
Yeah. Same,
you know, and it's just like, all this stuff would have been good, you know, and instead it's just cut down to this one little thing. And it's like, whether it was him or A$AP Rocky, or like, I think like literally, I still have it on my phone somewhere, like, the part I'm personally proudest of was the Alicia Keys like Instagram promo for it, where we pulled out the keyboard, the big keyboard style thing, and like made her do something with it, and she was just so cool to like play along with it.
That's
like
awesome.
That was just like a great, like, it was almost like a This Is SportsCenter commercial kind of thing.
Also, you do know that the 23rd Mark Echo complex, is where they shot the interiors and exteriors for Big,
right?
For the toy company,
which is crazy too. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we had 3 seasons. You know, I think, like, could things have been done differently? Yeah, I think there were some, like, especially
Clark.
Like more Clark. Especially like the last season, where it got really irregular, and like we wouldn't shoot for a week, and then, like, you know, it's like you wait 4 weeks, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're just, if you were looking to actively discourage an audience, that's kind of how you would have done it.
Right.
So like, you know, that stuff was kind of unfortunate, but whatever. Everyone was just figuring out video.
What was the feedback like from Nike or from Adidas or from any of the other shoe companies?
I mean, I feel it was good. It was good. Like, they would help out. They would send us stuff. I mean, I was definitely like, you know, that kind of became like, and I had practiced with it from Slam, where it's like you would hit up companies to send you stuff to shoot stuff for the magazine, and this was hitting up companies to send you stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, if we were to do it again, I think I would want to do something a little less, you know, timely. I'd want it to be more evergreen. I think like the interviews were pretty evergreen, but like the shoe stuff we talked about was like, oh, this is coming out next week, which unfortunately hurts when you're trying to be like, yo, why don't you guys go back and watch this again? You know, why would you, when the first third of the show is about a shoe that would already be out and gone? But I think that was the good thing about having me and Clark, because we're both older. We both had relationships with all the brands. So it's like, if we're going to talk down about something, they knew like where we were coming from. They knew we're not just like talking shit about something to talk shit about it.
Right.
Like, it actually had like a basis.
Mm-hmm. Who's the Fox News of sneaker culture?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough.
Come on, you're freelance now.
Programming.
You're not beholden to anybody.
What's Brad Hall? Was he like the super like nerdy unboxing guy who no one knew where he came from, or like what he was doing or why he was doing it? Like, you know, that was kind of funny. I think it's interesting now too, just to see like, you know, obviously the realization came around that the sneaker space is someplace that like everyone needs to be in. So like everyone's trying to do something with it now. You know, I think like, you know, sneaker shopping, which became like kind of the complex successor to us, like, is good because it's not a sneaker show per se. Like, it uses sneakers as a jumping off point to talk about
the same
other
way
stuff.
that like Hot Ones is not about wins. It's about
the interview.
Yeah,
and I think
it's
that's
about
good.
selling
And
sauces.
And I think if you get someone into a sneaker store, they're going to be more forthcoming about things. You know, obviously, I think Full Size Run is doing what we were doing, essentially, you know, and they're able to do it in a longer format, in like a less edited format, you know, and good. I'm glad someone's doing it, and I'm glad it's those guys. You know, it's like, you know, I wonder about Brendan's mustache sometimes, but sure, like they're doing what they do. They enjoy it. People seem to, go for it. I went and watched them do it live at Complex Con. It's cool. It's good to see like other people doing it.
What was the most left field shoe collaboration that showed up on your desk and you were like, well, I guess I have to either talk about this or I don't even know what to do with this shoe?
Well, I might have to think about that. There were obviously so many. And I feel like brands even now are trying to like sort of hit the brakes on collabs so much, I think. But, and this is like a broad answer, but I feel like there are so many that people are really scrambling to be like, instead of being like, yo, I have this idea and I have this shoe that I really love and I want to do this, like, let's find a way to do this. Instead, it's like, wow, we have like 12 collaborations to do this year. Like, what are we going to do on this middle one?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, we got to do something. And to be honest, like a lot of the bad ones like blend together. I feel like I can remember like good things, but bad ones are just like, oh my God, I don't want to even think about this anymore.
Well, what do you do with shoes that you don't want?
I mean, a lot of different things. I mean, I've definitely sold my share of things. Like back in the dark ages of the economic collapse, I sold off a lot of things I'd accumulated in that slam era.
We got
Same.
we got some State Farm like plaid shoes for
oh my God,
the
I
Jordans,
remember. That was an unfortunate one. The Cliff Paul
exactly.
CP3s.
Yeah.
We sold those for like a good amount.
Really?
Yeah,
mine
people were hungry for.
Mine are still in my storage unit, and I feel like I
Did we
missed,
sell them to you?
No, I feel like I missed the time.
Oh,
when
I think
those
so
could
too.
have
Yeah,
gone.
yeah.
Give it like 10 more years.
Yeah. I don't know if I have that much
Then
time.
they're gonna be hot.
Yeah.
They're
Same
gonna
with-
be like, yeah.
Those Pizza Hut ones were a bit of a nightmare too. Like I appreciate like the shoe surgeon's work, and like I saw today, like he has some Jordan 1 collab releasing, and it retails for like $2,000, and it's like for him to do that shoe for Pizza Hut. I mean, first of all, I hope he never pays for a pizza again in his life.
Yeah.
And second,
Or whatever Pizza Hut sells.
I hope he got an enormous check.
Yeah. I only just learned about the shoe surgeon, like probably like a few months ago, and I find his work amazing. Like I just the ability to like remix these shoes and to also like have kids learning under his tutelage.
Right.
Yeah.
We went out there and we did that Soul Origin series.
Which,
and,
by the way,
Yeah.
is fantastic.
Fantastic.
It's
Thank you.
really, really
I mean,
well done.
I'd never been in his like actual studio before, and he's in this like sketchy neighborhood in LA, and it's like you throw up this garage door and you're in this huge open space with all these sewing machines, and it's like it literally looks like a place where they would sample shoes at a major company. And I think they're running out of space there. They were talking about moving into a bigger space again. I think it's cool that guys like him really push, what they can do and get brands to be like, yo, we need to step up our game.
Yeah.
And to go back, like as far as bad collabs, like this isn't specific, and I understand I can be, but the ones that always kill me is when a brand like puts out literally like 50 collaborations of one shoe at the same time, and you're just like, yo, like who's the market for this? Like, first of all, and second of all, like, are there really 50 different brands and people who can do this? Like, I do feel like the people who do collaborate need to really pull back a little bit and be like, what is this doing for us? Like, what is this doing for anything? Like, does this really mean something, or are we doing this just because like, oh, a brand offered us a shoe, we have to do it?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I did see like there was this article in the Times about how it's Mickey Mouse's 100th anniversary, I think, this year or something like that, or I don't know, whatever. And so they were like, we're collaborating with all these different fashion. Like Mickey Mouse is going to be everywhere next year.
And Mickey Mouse is everywhere already.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing too, is like
Well, get excited.
these big anniversaries come up and people have already done things, or like, it's like someone does a lot of stuff for like the 20th anniversary or something, and then you're like, well, isn't the 25th anniversary matter? And like your 20th anniversary stuff is still sitting around, and you did this huge blowout for it. So it's like, how do you go even bigger? And it's like, I don't know.
Well, I love that now it's like everybody's celebrating every single anniversary. So it's like it's the 6th anniversary of this like minor album.
Right.
Like not even like the 3rd album from some artist,
But also like the whether it's Mickey Mouse or Peanuts or whatever else, like they collaborate with everyone. So it's like my girlfriend yesterday showed me on Instagram this like Snoopy thing, and I'm like, wait, who is that? Like, who did that? And it's like a Snoopy champion thing, and I think it's Todd Snyder, but it's like, wait, didn't like Levi's just did Snoopy, and You know, I don't even know who else. Like,
Yeah, probably like Uniqlo, like everybody.
and Vans did it, and like, or like there's a Hello Kitty shoe, and I'm like, wait, that's a Converse one, but didn't Vans just do that? And it's like, there's just too much.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
definitely way too much.
Right.
And like,
Or conversely, not enough.
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
double
That for a hot
down,
take,
double
yeah.
down. No, but I just read something by the internet's biggest curmudgeon, Matt Powell, about like sneaker sales. I think he has me blocked on Twitter too. Thanks, Matt. But he was writing about like athletic sales being down and sneaker sales being down, and like companies really need to focus on like making quality product and whatever. And he's always been like it's just about quality, and like good product is what matters. And it's like, I don't think he understands, like, there's a lot of good product out there. There's too much. I have literally a ton of good product in my storage unit that people are welcome to make offers on. Like,
Including those Cliff Pauls.
the Cliff Paul CP3s. Like, you literally cannot buy everything that's good. Like, if you go on, and this is how I shop for sneakers these days, like, I'll go on like Bodega or Nike.com and look through their sales site, and like stuff that came out that I was like, man, I really want to get this the day it dropped is on clearance. And it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means there's too much. I think brands have gotten used to, in a very short period of time, going from like trying to sell like 5 pairs of a shoe in a year. Now they're releasing like 15 different pairs on a weekend.
Yeah.
And it's like, you literally can't afford to buy all this stuff. No one can.
Right.
The only people who can are the people who go buy it and then resell it immediately.
Shouts
And,
to
like,
Ben Kicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who literally are like human Ponzi schemes.
Yeah.
It's like, you just go buy a shoe for $200, you sell it for $1,000, and then you buy 5 pairs of the $200 shoe the next weekend and flip those each for $1,000.
Yeah.
So you're just keeping your money moving. You're not like an end person for any of this stuff. And all this stuff is just like, it's a commodity now.
Right.
By the way, can I just say that human Ponzi scheme would be such a good NBA nickname in the way that like
Meta World Peace.
yeah no like like the human highlight reel or
Oh,
like
yeah,
Sure,
like
sure.
the question
Yeah.
the answer. What's a
It could be a rap name too, I
It'd be
guess.
a great one. Yeah.
It'd be a long one. It'd be almost like a
It is
bad like Wu-Tang name, or like an even worse Odd Future name.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd have to get like 3 chains. Yeah, I guess that's tough.
It's like Jerry the Human Ponzi Scheme.
Right.
What's a good NBA nickname that like just never popped off?
There's a dude, it wasn't Oliver Miller, but there's a dude named Pig Miller. I was trying to think of him before. I forget whether he went to Alabama, like where it came from. He was one of the dudes on the Rockets when I went out there to do the story, and I just recall him having a toothpick in his mouth all the time. I just think those wild country dudes back then, like, you don't get as many of them anymore. Like, those nicknames are great.
Right.
Like, and same thing, like a one word sort of thing.
How about when there was just Big Country? Big Country
Big
Reeves.
Country was amazing.
Like that's all he was.
But
he was just a nickname.
I was also a fan of like, so Glenn Robinson came into the league, nicknamed Big Dog.
Yep.
But there was already a big dog
Right.
in the NBA. So he got named Antoine Carr, who played
Yeah.
for the Jazz
Oh,
and
yeah.
also the Rockets. And he
Yep.
wore Oakleys all the time, which was also great.
Charles Oakley.
So he just became original Big Dog, which is even better than being Big Dog.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great name.
Just this is so way off, but like the idea of like once a Nick, always a Nick thing, because like Junkyard Dog is like a sort of community like
Right,
representative
right.
for the Knicks now. It's like you played like 1 year with the Knicks,
Yes,
like, but
yes.
once a Nick, always a Nick.
No, and it's amazing that there's those guys who like John Starks. God love John Starks.
Yeah,
and it's like, he'll forever be remembered for the dunk or whatever, which I always argue wasn't really on Jordan because he was kind of out of the way.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
But
You're
it's like-
such a Jordan apologist.
But-
like it's
fan.
But Starks has kind of agreed to do literally everything for the Knicks.
Yes,
I feel
correct.
like he signed some open-ended contract where it's like, if we ask you to do something, to present a check to some, like, the Hero Cop of the Week or whatever,
Yeah,
you're doing it. So like somehow, like, the fact that he had literally the worst game in finals history that basically
Yeah.
lost them a title, like, no one even talks about that anymore. I think maybe that was like a clause in that deal. Like, we'll never bring up your like 1 for 16 shooting night when Rolando Blackman was rotting on the bench if you agree to do literally everything. Like, I feel like his number has to get retired at some point just for like his post-playing career.
Yeah, no, correct.
It's just been funny over the years, like, and I'm sure for you guys as Knicks fans even more so, like watching guys like Houston and Starks and like Junkyard Dog, be brought in for all this stuff. Meanwhile, like Patrick Ewing was like persona non grata for decades.
Kills me. It really does
like,
kill me.
Also
how they did Oak. That's just horrible.
Yeah. Well, Oak, it was even worse. I mean, he can get arrested in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
But for Ewing, it's like I understand he was like a prideful guy and like didn't want to like step back or whatever, even when clearly like Sprewell and Camby were the guys driving that team at that point.
Yeah.
But like to essentially like write him out, and not say like like why do you? He was the best Knick ever, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Or in the ballpark.
So. Listen, seemingly all of your like greatest loves when it comes to like hip hop, when it comes to basketball, when it comes to shoes, are at the center of culture. How much pride do you take in that you have been there along for this ride?
I mean, look, a lot of it obviously has been luck and been good timing. I happened to get into this business when things were starting to take off in that way, like, and got in at Slam, which was the place that combined hip hop and basketball, and obviously brought sneakers heavy into the mix. Like they were doing sneakers in the magazine while I was there. We launched Kicks and like sort of launched like sneaker media per se. And that time frame while I was there, that mid 90s era has been like the sweet spot too, where like the shoes from that era, the hip hop from that era is still celebrated. I saw like today is 25 years since Enter the Wu-Tang came out and Midnight Marauders. Funny thing, I don't think I heard Enter the Wu-Tang for like 3 years until I don't think I heard that album until like 96 or something.
Get ready for a bunch of internet comments.
Yeah. I'm ready for that. I actually, it's funny, and this has nothing to do with that question, but I remember going to Hoop Summit, which was like the second Team USA high school game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Kobe played in it, but it was like Jermaine O'Neal. When I tried to convince Jermaine O'Neal that he should go to like a junior college, that was really smart. I'm glad he didn't take my advice. Tim Thomas and those dudes.
Yeah.
And I bought Enter the Wu-Tang on cassette that weekend and like played it in my rental car like the whole weekend.
Wow.
And just
in your convertible.
Nothing but that. Yeah. No, that was like a regular car and it poured the whole weekend, so it didn't matter. But yeah, no, it's cool seeing that stuff come back around. It makes me feel very old seeing stuff get retroed, where it's like, oh yeah, I remember writing about that shoe when it initially came out, and now like kids are able to get it who don't even remember it.
Right.
And by the way, they're not able to get it.
Wait,
but what's an interest that you have? Because Eric's like, what's an interest that you have that's been celebrated? What are some interests that you have that have not been celebrated?
Well, I mean,
like, do you collect like Nazi memorabilia?
No. Cut.
It's so in right now, by the way. 2018.
But before I was into hip hop, I was into heavy metal. Like I went to metal shows like first, and I've stayed into that. And like I've always been a metal fan, and like, that's the kind of thing I've wanted to write about and haven't really had the chance. I haven't really had the outlet. I've gotten to do a couple things here and there. I'd like to do a little bit more chops if you're listening, like the Def Jam stuff. I'm going to do that, because Slayer had their very brief period on Def Jam, and like Rick Rubin obviously being into that too. So I mean, there's that. I guess that's a big part of it, like old metal, like concert shirts and stuff like that. That stuff has kind of come back around. No thanks to the Kardashians. Yeah, but now the stuff is like super expensive because of people who don't even care about the bands. Like it's a very weird thing to like.
Yeah, everybody just like the aesthetic.
See happen. Yeah.
Or they just like Stranger Things, and it's like I like things that look like Stranger Things.
that 80s, the 90s era.
Yeah.
No, I mean I've gotten to do things in a lot of the areas I've had interest. I've been fortunate enough, and now it's like, seeing like what comes around with that, whether it's been this Soul Origin series or like, writing for the Jordan site or stuff like that. It's like I've been fortunate to make a lot of connections through the years that, I'm able to use now, or like, fortunately people call me about, since I'm not the most self-starting person in the world.
Ask your girlfriend. Procrastinator.
Doing this thing with Iverson at Complex Con, and even when I was talking to him at that, it was like, damn, like I've actually known this guy for 20 years. Like that's crazy. Like you don't think about doing anything for that long.
And he's about to get retroed.
Allen Iverson too.
Well, listen, Russ, we're super glad that you took the time to come up here and tell your story, and you've had a hell of a career.
And now it's over.
And
That's the prize at the end of this. Like,
but the biggest thing we want people to know is just like Fat Joe, it's Russ Bengtson TS.
Exactly. I should borrow one of his.
You should.
Exactly, and just wear that. Yeah. No, but thank you guys for having me. Like seeing all the people we've had, I'm like, really?
Yeah. Oh no, for sure.
Oh no, well we just didn't have anybody to come on.
Thanks so much, Russ.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening to this new episode of A Waste Time with It's the Real. Jeff, people want to find out more about us. I'm Eric. You are Jeff. Our caricatures are on our new sweatshirts at ItsTheReal.com/shop. Go pick yourself up 1 or 2 or 3 right now. Jeff, people want to find out more about this podcast called A Waste of Time with It's the Real. We are It's the Real, no apostrophe, no spaces. If people want to find out more about what's going on in our lives or get themselves some holiday gifts, where can they go?
You can always go to ItsTheReal.com, ItsTheReal.com. No apostrophes, no spaces, ever.
Yeah.
Never any apostrophes or spaces in It's the Real. You can also go and find our podcast on iTunes. Search for A Waste of Time with It's the Real, or maybe you're on Spotify.
I am.
Yeah. So if you're looking to find us there, go search for A Waste of Time with It's the Real, or you can even go to SoundCloud.com/A-Waste-of-Time.
Okay.
You can also go to SoundCloud.com/2Jews2BlackDudes. That is to get our podcast at the locks.
Our movie review podcast.
Yes.
You know, where we reviewed Jurassic Park and
Coco and Last Dragon, all the movies that you want to get our reviews on.
You've Got Mail.
New episode coming soon.
Yes, go check the last ones out before you hear this new one.
Also, you can go find us on social media at It's The Real on Twitter, at It's The Real on Facebook, at It's The Real on Instagram. And yes, we are heavy in the streets. Come find us.
Yes. Jeff, we like to shout people out because we so appreciate the fact that you guys recommend this podcast to your friends. There's a lot of times when people are just like, hey, I'm so happy that I got the go-ahead from my friend, whoever, who said, yo, you have to listen to this specific episode and then 10 others. And we like to shout out you who have shouted out us. See how that works? Jeff, who do you want to shout out today?
I want to shout out Ernest Wilkins.
Yeah, Chi-Town.
Chi-Town Zone. I want to also shout out, since we're doing a Midwest swing, I want to shout out Cliff Skywalker.
Shout out to Cliff up there in Michigan.
And I also want to shout out Joe Freshgoods.
Shout out to Joe Freshgoods back down there in the Windy City. Jeff, I want to shout out a guy who we ran into recently who is on a mission. He is dedicating a lot of his hours, Jeff.
Oh, to us.
It is Skip from BK, who,
For some reason.
well, maybe there's a lot of reasons, but he has chosen to listen to every episode of A Waste of Time with It's the Real, not one episode once a week. This, Jeff, is binge listening to this podcast in short order. He is, last I checked, probably around 150. He recently heard us shout him out from the very first time when he committed to listening to every episode. And he asked us today, when we were starting 12 days of podcast this December, which, by the way, is 12 new episodes in 12 days, because he wanted to catch up by that point. So, according to my watch, 2 weeks or 3 weeks to catch up on every episode in our catalog. And that, my friend,
Is how you slow jam the news.
is just amazing and remarkable and great and a true waste of time. Jeff, as always, not for real, for real.
Sure.
See you guys next week.
The sun's out.